What up, everybody? Welcome back to the channel. So you're probably wondering, why the hell did I buy this camera? Honestly, the only answer you need to know is look at it. And I know vanity's not a good thing, but look at this camera. This camera is beautiful. That alone is basically the only reason you need to buy this camera. Don't let anybody fool you otherwise. All right, let's go ahead and get into some specifics about this camera. Before we talk about its beauty, which was the first thing I had to mention, let's talk about just kind of specs and value. Honestly, from that point of view, this camera is completely not worth it. And obviously this is a digital camera, Leica M10-D. And the D there stands for, I don't really know what it stands for because all the M10 cameras are digital, but this nonetheless is a digital camera without a screen. So that's -1 point already when it comes to value. Megapixels wise, I think it's 24 or something like that. So -2 right there again when it comes to value, because there's cameras that are a fifth of the price of this one with a lot more megapixels. Let's see what else. In terms of controls and functionality, video lacks all of that stuff. So -3 when it comes to value. That's three really big things right there that this camera does not have, that basically make it potentially significantly overpriced. From that point of view, I'm not going to disagree with anybody. I'm not going to argue. I'm not even going to go there when it comes to that conversation, because guess what? You're right. This camera is not worth the money when you talk about those three things right there, because it just doesn't have any of them. But that's why this camera exists. This camera exists specifically to not have all those stuff. And that might not make sense to some people. And again, I get it. But for those of you who are looking for a very quote unquote pure digital photography kind of experience, this is the camera. And the fact that it lacks all those things I just mentioned are exactly why this camera exists. This camera exists to make it so that it's just you and the world around you, and you interact with it by pressing the shutter. That's it. The only other things you can do here are obviously manual focus, which obviously is a very important part of photography. And then you have a couple settings. You've got your ISO and you've got your shutter speed. If you're like me, and I know some of you are gonna cringe right now, but if you're like me, you leave this camera on auto on both ISO and on shutter speed. That ensures that you have to worry about nothing when you're composing your shot, except for exactly that, composition. And of course, focus. But those are kind of the two key things you gotta take away when using this camera, and that's about it. So why did I buy this camera? I think that's the question you're all probably wondering. Honestly, I think there's two key reasons. Number one is that I really wanted to buy a digital camera. Obviously, there's a bunch of other options that I can buy that aren't this, but I wanted to buy a camera that I actually would look forward to using. And based off of renting this camera, which I did, I paid about $100 a day to rent this camera with a Summilux lens, which is actually this footage that you see here. I shot that shortly after renting the camera, right before returning it. I had to return it, so I had to record that footage because I knew I'd put out some content. But what happened after that? I loved it so much, I went and bought it. So anyways, I rented the camera, and I realized very quickly that this camera was fun. And not only was it fun, but the restriction in terms of controls and functionality were actually things that I really appreciated about it when using the camera. I found myself just using this almost like I use a rangefinder film camera, except maybe even kind of more enjoyable, because I didn't have to have that worry about, did I get the shot? Am I wasting photos? What's the point of taking this shot versus that shot? I could approach it, the way you would with the digital camera, where you can shoot as many photos as you'd like, but the actual mechanical operations of the camera felt very much like a film camera. It's this beautiful kind of middle ground. So that's honestly the first reason I bought it, and I think that's the most compelling reason. But the second reason I bought this camera, and this is gonna go back to the beginning of the video, is that this camera is beautiful. And I know, again, wow, you bought a camera because of how it looks and blah, blah, blah. Listen, people buy jewelry, people buy clothing, people buy accessories, all because of the way it makes them feel when they wear it. And for some people, kind of potentially toxically, because they think it makes them look cooler or better to other people. Those things aren't great, but those things are part of the human experience. And this camera definitely achieves that. When I wear this camera, I feel a little bit cooler. Judge me, go ahead, but I guarantee you, every single person who buys a Leica feels the exact same way. And if they say they don't, most likely they're lying. Although there's definitely some people out there who are just, incredible photographers and they like the Leica stuff. But anyways, the point is, this is kind of like wearing jewelry. You put this around your neck, it feels good, it's heavy, it's dense. You appreciate how it looks as an object, and you like how it looks on you as part of your kind of flow when you're accessorizing. So a couple quick things here to kind of give you some more information about this camera. What are the things I really like about it? Well, first and foremost is the density of this camera. It feels amazing in the hand. It's heavy. It really feels like it was well built, like a tank. A lot of digital cameras do not feel this way because, you know, they're made to feel a little bit lighter. I think people actually like lighter cameras typically, especially if you're a working professional. And that all makes total sense. But this is not really for working professionals, or at least not in the way that some of those other digital cameras are. This is meant to be kind of used by itself and not to be kind of paired with all these accessories, and therefore weight is not really a factor. So I love the density of this camera. The other thing I love about this camera is actually the way it operates. You've got your full auto ISO and your full auto shutter speed. That's very kind of normal when it comes to digital photography, but for me, it honestly felt like an upgrade because I haven't really been shooting a lot of digital, and therefore, you know, I've been shooting a lot of film cameras, and especially my old rangefinder cameras, they have auto nothing. With this, you've got automatic on both of those operations. And again, that's not unique to this camera, obviously, but you know, when you pair that auto experience with some of the other manual functionality that you can't control, it's a really good kind of middle ground between the two. Lastly, the other thing I say that I really like about this camera, and this is really gonna, you know, take us away from the kind of analog world, is that Wi-Fi capability right there. And I love that about this camera. It's actually very interesting. The Wi-Fi capability on this camera is kind of cumbersome and doesn't work that well. And that's kind of like what I like about it. I have a theory, and maybe this is true, maybe it's not. I don't know, I haven't looked it up, but I think Leica made the Wi-Fi capability kind of, you know, subpar on purpose. It's slow, first of all, in connecting. You have this light right here that'll just blink, 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 and you have to wait for it to stop blinking in order for you to connect. So that's very slow. And the app itself isn't a great app either when you actually log into it. I think Leica potentially may have done that on purpose secretly because, you know, it gives you the actual access point that you want and need at certain occasions. For example, you know, if I shoot all day, at the end of the day when I'm hanging out, you know, at home or in the hotel room, if I'm on a holiday trip, you know, I can sit down and kind of go through the photos and then interact with them, which I think is a good kind of middle ground. You know, you shoot all day, you don't even bother to look at anything because you can't. And then when you're kind of relaxed and you're done for that day, you check it out. I think that's great because, again, it kind of, you know, when you're shooting the camera, you use it like a film camera where you can't see anything in real time. But instead of having to wait for your scans to come back or potentially go home and do all this work yourself, at the end of the day, you can log into the app and look at your images. So it's not too easy, but it's also not, you know, impossible. And I think that that's a fantastic kind of, you know, approach. So those three things right there are things I really like. Things I don't like about this camera, well, the battery life is not great. Digital camera. I think Canon is kind of the only company that does, you know, batteries well. Because Sony, I know for a long time had issues with batteries, and I guess Leica kind of does as well. The other thing I don't like about this camera is that it goes to sleep, and it takes a good like 3 seconds to wake up, you know, when you tap the shutter button there. That doesn't seem like a long time, but if you just got the camera kind of asleep around your neck and you see the shot you want, you can't just instantly catch it the way you can with basically any other camera, especially with your film cameras where there is no sleep mode because it's all analog. With this, you got to tap it and it takes a good 2-3 seconds and then it's ready for you. That could be a problem if you're not constantly thinking about this and getting ahead of it. So, you know, it's kind of a major downside. It doesn't make shooting the camera impossible, but I did miss a bunch of shots when I was out in the streets, and now I'm just constantly thinking about that and have my finger around here ready in case the moment I see something, I, as quickly as possible, hit that button. So yeah, this isn't really a review. This is just kind of an open thoughts on this camera, but yes, this camera is expensive. Yes, it's potentially significantly overpriced, but at the end of the day, you get what you pay for. And when you pay for this, you get a Leica. All right, y'all, that's the video for today. Let me know what you think about this purchase. I'm very excited to hear the hate and the love because the Leica boys give you all the love when you buy the Leica, and the haters give you all the hate when you talk about Leica. So bring it on. All right, y'all, to the next one. I'm out.